Hello, my name's Steve Mills. If you don't know me, welcome. If you've seen me before, then thanks for coming back and thanks for listening. Today, I want to talk to you about my six-step results process for growing a business. Now, before you switch off, because, oh yeah, you've heard the five processes and the seven this and the 28,000 something else. This is something that I've developed over 30 years. 30 years of being in business, and it's around what I see as a very, very common mistake, and that is selling to strangers. People try and sell to strangers. It's a little bit like going up to, a person of the opposite sex and asking them to marry you the first time you meet them. So I walk down the street going up to a lady going, "Hi, my name's Steve. Would you marry me?" "No?" "Oh, all right, then I'll go and speak to somebody else." And this happens all the time in business. Obviously, instead of asking them to marry you, you ask them to buy from you. So we get somebody who connects to me on LinkedIn. They ask me to connect. I say yes. 10 seconds later, by automation, I get a message saying, "Hi, thanks for connecting. Would you like to buy my widgets?" And I go, "No, no, I've no interest whatsoever in your widgets. I don't even know who you are. I certainly don't know, like, and trust you. I don't know, like, and trust your company. And I don't even know, like, and trust your products or services. I don't know you." And that's a really big problem. That happens all the time. It happens with email marketing, it happens with advertising, it happens all over social media, and and generally with social, it's either, do you want to buy something, or it's something that's of no real value or interest in 99% of the people who's seeing it. It's like we've just moved office, or we're just about to do this, or, something that's not of interest. So I want to talk to you today about this system. It's a system that's proven. I've used it for many years, and I work to help my businesses, my clients, develop their marketing. And it's the fundamental part of what I call my Kickstart program. So if that's of interest to you, just go to my website and look under Results Mastery for the Kickstart program. However, let's crack on. Let me just share my screen if I may. So I want to show you the program as well as talking to you. If, by the way, you're listening to this on my podcast, because this is going out on video on YouTube, it'll be on my website, it'll be on my blog, it'll go out through social media, it'll go out onto my podcast, where I get about 7,000 to 8,000 views. So this is, I hope anyway, I certainly believe this is very important stuff. Let me just make my screen big like that. That's it. Okay, so this is the Results Mastery six-step process for business growth. Now, where does it start? Well, it starts with step one. Step one is the first thing, and that is overcoming obscurity. Because one of the biggest problems I believe that businesses have got right now is obscurity. Let's face it, if you run a small business, unless you're very, very localized, the chances are that most of your market don't know of you. I've been doing this now for 30 years, this being helping businesses to become more effective in the areas of sales and marketing, essentially to make more money more easily, more often. That's what I've been doing. That's what I've dedicated 30 years of my life to. And one of the biggest problems that I've still got is overcoming obscurity. There are 3 million businesses in the UK. And right now, if you said to me, how many of those, Steve, can you communicate with? My answer would be about 80 to 90,000 of them. So I'm known at some level. They're either on my email list, they're connected to me on social media, they visit my website, and so on and so forth. About 80 to 90,000. Now, to be honest, that's probably 1,000 times more than most of the business owners I speak to. They tell me they've got 1,000, they've got 800, they've got 2,000, they've got 5,000 contacts on LinkedIn. And when you ask them how big is your market, they often say, well, I got 5,000 on LinkedIn, but my market is 200,000 because I work with, I don't know, design companies, and there's 200,000 of those on LinkedIn in the UK. And so they're basically marketing to a small fraction of what they could be. Now, obviously, you know how to do this. You've got to advertise. You've got to LinkedIn. You've got to email. You've got to spend some money on marketing. You've got to use your podcast. I just said to you, 8,000 people will watch this or listen to this rather on my podcast. What's that about? It's about getting me out there. I'm not here to try and sell you anything. I've got nothing to sell you today. What I am doing is, I hope anyway, demonstrating my expertise. So come the time when you want help with marketing, I've overcome obscurity. I've then step two, been in consistent communication with you. So it's not we're not talking about a quarterly newsletter here. We're talking about a weekly email, posting every day on social, communicating with you on a one-to-one basis, and so on and so forth. Until we get to step three, where people start getting to know, like, and trust me. That's what I want. I want to be the expert, or the go-to person when they need help getting more leads. And let's face it, we all need help getting more leads. When they're in that position, then they come to me rather than to somebody else. Once we've got there, then the next step, right? Once we've gotten to know, like, and trust us, at least at some level, they've been to my website, they then watched a video, they perhaps attended a webinar that I've ran, they've read my blog post, they've connected to me on LinkedIn. There's already a reasonable level of trust there. Hopefully, they like me and they feel as though they know me. I always remember many years ago, the first time I spoke to Peter Thompson live. It was really weird because I'd listened to him for hours and hours and hours on cassette back then, believe it or not. Yes, I am that old. I listened to him on cassette for hours and hours and hours. And then when I spoke to him in person, it was really quite strange. This person I'd listened to was now a real human after all. So, that is like, money in the bank. It's worth its weight in gold. Once we get there, we have to communicate on a two-way basis, a little bit like I did with Peter. He'd communicated me with me. He'd sent me his monthly business development program on cassette and sometime later on CD. And I'd signed up to that. And then we met in person. He was running an event. I went along there. We met, we had a conversation, we shook hands. It was great to meet him and talk to him. And since then, our relationship's developed. I've paid him, I'd read to think, probably somewhere around about £8,000 to £10,000 over the years. And do you know what? That came from nothing, from the first communication I ever had, which actually I remember was a letter that he wrote to me. So, it shows how from small acorns grow mighty oaks. So we've got to get that communication back. And one of the best ways of doing that, apart from keeping in touch on a regular basis, is to ask them questions. What's going to happen when you ask a question? Some, not all, will respond, whether that's on LinkedIn or Facebook or email or perhaps in person, perhaps on the phone. But they respond. Once we've got communication going with them, and ideally part of that should be speaking to them on the phone or on a Zoom meeting. We've then got to turn that communication into a meeting. Okay, we've got to get in front of them, ideally physically. So you're sat around a table or wherever it may be. But if not, virtually, like I'm doing right now on a Zoom meeting. So either of those two ways are really good. Once we get there, we've got a unique opportunity. A lot of people tell me, well, I'm really good at what I do, but I don't manage to convert enough leads into meetings and then on into sales. So we've got to look at that and say, are our sales skills good enough? Because everybody I speak to say when I ask them, are you good at selling? Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm really good at selling. When I ask them, how do you overcome objections? They go, well, I don't really know. I sort of say this or I might say that. In other words, they don't have a system and they're not trained in that system. They're winging it. They're making it up as they go along. Now, you wouldn't expect an actor to turn up on a film set without actually learning their script, would you? So why are we as business owners turning up in what could be a sale that could be worth many, many thousands, hundreds of thousands, or even millions of pounds to us, and we don't even have a script, and we've never done any sales training? Do you know, a little while ago, I asked 1,000 people, hands up, who's responsible for selling? And I had virtually 1,000 hands. I then said, hands up, who's done any sales training in the last year? I had round about 50 hands go in the air. 95% of people in that room were salespeople who hadn't been bothered and couldn't be bothered getting any sales. Why is that? Because they know everything. No, it's because they hadn't. I don't know. They've got various reasons for doing that, none of which are actually valid. You should be training yourself. I train myself every day in sales, every single day, sales and marketing, even though I've been doing this for 30 years. You need the answers to the questions. You need to have the questions that you're going to ask. You need to be good at presenting the products, opening the meeting, converting those inquiries, answering the questions that the client has, digging for pain, for problems that the client might be experiencing that you can solve. You need to be good at overcoming objections, and you need to be good at closing the sale. And without that, what you're going to be good at is creating a whole range of work for yourself. If you want, let me put it this way, if you convert 4 out of 10 leads into meetings right now, and you improved that to 6 out of 10, from 4 out of 10 to 6 out of 10, which is a 20% improvement. It doesn't give you a 20% growth in your business. What it gives you over time is a 50% growth in your business. How incredibly powerful is that? And that's what you want. So that's the system. 6 steps. Get known, overcome obscurity, keep in touch with those people, build a relationship till they know, like, and trust you, get them to communicate back to you, turn those communications into meetings, become good at turning those meetings into sales, and then I'd say be good at cross-selling and upselling and consistently selling into people who are already customers. So you improve what's known as the lifetime value. The lifetime value of a customer. How much is a customer worth to you? Well, it depends on how much they spend, how often they spend it, and how often they come back. So if I get a customer, for example, let me give you a good example. Somebody joins my Kickstart program. Now, it is the grand total, the very expensive amount of £10 £10 a month to join my Kickstart program. Now, I don't know about you, but I think it's ludicrous. And it's ludicrous for anybody not to buy it, to be honest. But it's a tenner. Okay. So you think, why are you selling stuff for a tenner, Steve? Well, the reason is that years ago I decided I wanted to help as many businesses as I could. And I see this as a great way. My goal, actually, by the way, is to get 1,000 members. 1,000 members, that's 10 grand a month. Is that right? Yeah, it is. Yeah, 10 grand a month. Okay. So that's not bad, is it? And if you think about that, what do I have to do for that? Well, there's this is not one-to-one work. This is, people get a weekly Q&A with me. I do a weekly webinar for them. I send out a weekly email. They gain access to a load of video training and my client portal and my podcast, the professional level. So they get a load of stuff, but actually the amount of time that I'm spending personally is not very much. So that's a great model, I believe. We've just got to see if we can make it work now by getting those sorts of numbers. But anyway, let me finish my talk for now. So I hope that resonates. I hope you take it on board more than anything. I always tell people learning stuff ain't going to grow your business. It's what you do with what you learn that's going to make any difference. If you start working on obscurity, being consistently communicating with people, building levels of know, like, and trust by, I don't know, perhaps you send them testimonials and things like that, some case studies and so on. Getting that two levels of communication, turning that into meetings, converting more of those meetings into sales, and then keeping the customer. I've got a customer right now who's been with me 10 years. 10 years. Every month they pay me an amount of money and they've been with me 10 years. That's very, very powerful, isn't it? I'm sure you'll agree. So anyway, that's it. Thank you very much for listening. Don't forget, if you are on my podcast, then subscribe to my podcast so you don't miss anything. If you're looking at this on YouTube, then again, subscribe to YouTube. If you want to talk to me about how to grow your business, then book a meeting. Just go to my website, which is www.results-mastery.com. You'll find a gold button. Click on that, get yourself booked in, and we can talk on Zoom sometime soon. So thanks very much for listening, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon. Thank you. So, thank you for listening. And if you've enjoyed this podcast, and even more, if you've benefited from it and you'd like to know more, you'd like more of my help, and you'd like to benefit from my nearly 30 years of experience working with and learning from the leading experts in the world in the area of sales and marketing, then here's what you need to do next. You need to go to my website, which is results-mastery.com, and use the gold button to book yourself a meeting on a one-to-one basis with me. Thank you very much for listening again, and I look forward to speaking to you very, very soon. Thank you.